Thank you so much for taking some time to check out this project. The themes that we cover today are a little bit broad and we cover a lot of territory, but just so you know what you're getting into, the three big themes that we touch on that I'm super interested in getting your feedback on and hearing your thoughts and if it resonates is around conscious entrepreneurship. I talk a little bit about my journey with raising the $7.5 million for Joe and how I now understand the venture capital scene and how different that is than my perception coming into that. And then around balancing material success with authenticity and just recognizing that experience of an over identification with material outcomes and what alternatives there are to that. I also talk a little bit about my own personal journey and how the passing of my father was the real accelerant to choosing a more authentic and deeply rooted approach to the company with Joe and in my own personal life. So thank you so much for taking a listen. Let me know if this resonates. This is the first of maybe the only episode we do, but just putting the feelers out there to see if this attracts community in the way that I hope it will. If it resonates with you, please let me know. If not, that's okay too. Thanks so much for giving it a listen. The intention behind this is really, over the last few years, I've undergone a really big evolution and shift just in terms of how I relate to the world and to work and to my role as a father and to what I think the reason for being on this earth is in general. And as part of that, I've been looking to get connected with community and have conversations with like minds. And I've had some moderate success in that. And I'm super grateful that my brother and my family and my wife have absolutely been along for the journey and are right there with me. But there's a lot of conversations, especially around entrepreneurship and what it means to be a conscious entrepreneur, and to do things out of principles that are maybe a little bit different than what we see in the news and the headlines and in culture in terms of the why. And after doing some digging and trying to make some connections with folks, I have realized that perhaps for me, the best path or the best way to build and cultivate that community that I'm looking for is to start expressing what is really trying to unfold from within me. That might sound funny to some folks, but I think that there is in me, and I think maybe in all of us, there is something that is yearning to unfold if we give it permission to. And so this is, in a sense, me stepping out in trust of that and treating this as a project to see where it goes. I don't know where it will take me, but I appreciate anybody who is coming across this for taking a moment to listen and to be curious about it. So what are the things that I want to talk about, and what is that shift that I'm speaking to? I think that maybe the best entry point for that is really around the journey that I've had as an entrepreneur along with my brother and our story with Joe. So just put it in context within my own story. When we started Joe, we had the intention around, hey, let's do this really cool thing where if we can make small business as convenient as big corporate giants, then that's going to be great for small business. And what a great opportunity. I think this is a great business idea, and I think it can make a lot of money, and we can live a life like we see on the romanticized version of what it means to build a startup and pitch VCs and get a bunch of money and hire a team and all that stuff, right? And so at our core, we always wanted to do it from a place of doing the right thing on behalf of small business owners. But I will say that the systems that we stepped into, it really starts challenging the good intentions very quickly, because you step into a system that is really finely tuned and designed with the right mechanics and power structures to squeeze out anything that doesn't serve the almighty dollar very quickly. Um, and so I can talk through a little bit about that. I think for entrepreneurs out there, or aspiring entrepreneurs, or folks that are building an idea and trying to decide, do I bootstrap or do I go for venture capital? This is something that I really underestimated when we got into it. So my point of view when we first started Joe was, I saw getting venture backed funding was like, this is the instrument for transformative business ideas that may require a ton of money, but it's the moonshot. It's if you stick the landing on it, you make a major change. So if you can do something positive with that, if you can have a business that has good intentions, then you can create a lot of good. And I think it can be true. And I think there's impact investors and there's absolutely an opportunity. In my understanding of that being the type of instrument that you are pursuing with venture capital, my belief was then that the investors that are in that space that have entered into venture capital, they see it the same way. And that's a big assumption. And I learned that's not always true. It's not never true, but it's also something that you have to be very intentional around. As it gets more commoditized as a financial instrument, how companies are analyzed becomes more and more formulaic. And I do think that there's the speculative element that I think is not a healthy dynamic in stock markets either, is perhaps exacerbated in the private money markets to that extent. And so you see these themes of, hey, like fewer startups are IPOing and all these things. And I just suspect that that dynamic creates these kind of hollow, speculative businesses that, under the diligence of what it takes to IPO, perhaps just don't hold up as much because everybody just follows the pack a bit. And I think it's natural, and I don't think it's just in VC. And I also don't mean to make this just a commentary on VC in general. And I don't mean to make it sound like sour grapes. I just think in every walk of life, in every practice, in everybody's craft, there is balance that needs to be struck. And so I think that there are likely funds that are out there that see it the same way and have the same intentions. And if you're one of them, give us a holler at Joe. But I do have faith in the potential of that VC instrument to be the moonshot, and also to invest in accelerating good and transforming systems and infrastructure that just aren't working for people anymore, to plug in and help where government is failing and where perhaps culture is failing, and where, rather than just optimize around making as much money as possible, can we create systems that generate more trust and more harmony and more good? If the last generation of all these investment vehicles came out with these algorithms that have torn our country apart and created so much disharmony in the world, can more entrepreneurs and investors take a conscious approach to saying, let's not wait for the governments to solve this. Let's put doing good as the number one thing, just hands down. Like, why does that have to be like a niche for impact investors? It just, shouldn't that be the norm? Shouldn't we demand that of each other and of the institutions we invest in and who we vote for? Anyway, the impact that investors and VC can have on culture is, I think, bigger than we may realize. And if we can just take a chill pill a little bit on trying to hoard or create as much short-term value as possible at the expense of our future, I don't think we're all that far off from it. I just think if we can just move a little bit more consciously, we'll go a really long way. So that dynamic took me for a ride as a founder. You get in with good intentions. When you're running out of money, you want your dream to continue to live on. You see yourself really forced to betray certain parts of yourself and thinking through, do the ends justify the means? Not to say you're doing anything ethically wrong, but just you maybe move a little quicker than you would have. You hire a little quicker than you're not thinking of the business as an expression of something that you think should exist in the world. You're trying to hit milestones so you don't die. And when you're just trying not to die, you're making decisions from a place of fear and lack. And that energy transmits in ways that you don't realize. And so we lived through that with Joe 100%. And we did it through the pandemic. At every step of the way, we did everything we absolutely could on behalf of trying to help small business owners, trying to do the right thing for our team. Even when your intentions are good, but you're making decisions from a place of fear and lack, that is what, in my experience, manifests. It took the passing of my father to really just take a step back and look at absolutely everything that we were doing and asking, like, was this worth it? And there was one moment in particular that just changed everything for me because of a lot of the dynamics that I was mentioning before. And it's just hard to run a business. We were running out of money with Joe. I think I had maxed out my cards. And I remember my dad came over. I can't even remember why. But I was so attached to the business. My ego was so attached and identified with the success or failure of the business that the last time I saw my dad, I was so depressed and jaded that I couldn't break out of that for a moment to give him a hug. Like my last moment with my dad was, I know he understands, and this isn't like a victim story or a sob story, and I made peace with it, but I didn't hardly look at my dad the last time we saw each other. And he, I think the next day, passed unexpectedly. And so the gift in moments like that is it has you take a look at the decisions you're making, the beliefs that underpin those decisions. And I think that pain and the grief offers a gift in begetting the question of, is this worth it? Is this what I expected? Because when you're hurting so much, like at that point, you can put up your hands and say, yeah, this isn't working for me anymore. And then you have to make the decision of, if I'm going to continue forward on this, how does that need to look? And what are my intentions right now? Not what am I rationalizing as my intentions? What am I saying they are? What am I convincing myself that they are? What are they truly? And what should they be? And so I've always thought of myself as an authentic person and someone that was honest. And I care about people. I've always had a lot of compassion for people. I feel that I can empathize with people really well. But I realized that maybe I wasn't always being authentic with myself. And maybe I was making compromises that I didn't feel good about anymore. If it was leaving me in that state where I couldn't connect with my dad, and then I was realizing like, wow, I'm really like these last 5 years of my kid's life have just flown by, and I haven't really, it's like, how much of that time have I been physically present, but preoccupied and in my phone and sending email? My hands and my wrists I'd have to take breaks from the phone because I was on it so much. It was causing like repetitive stress injuries. And then just the brain addiction of these loops of check the email, check the Slack, check the this. And anytime something there was a little bit of vibration or there was an issue, I felt justified in feeling like I have to do this and I have to go all in and I have to be fully consumed to have a chance of this succeeding. Those were all just beliefs that weren't rooted in something that went beyond material success. And when your deepest roots in terms of what your beliefs are and how you're making decisions and how you're organizing your lives and how you're structuring your relationships and how you're spending your time and your life, if those only go as deep as material outcomes, then I think eventually when the wind blows strong enough, those trees are going to fall. But that's what I was feeling like was happening. And the grief of my father's passing, I think, was the best gift for me because it just set me off on a different path to say, if the roots don't grow deep enough here, where do they? And what would being a entrepreneur and spending my time on this business, what must this look like for it to be worth it? And over time, over these last couple of years, that gave my brother and I the courage to really say, you know what? If we have this risk of going down, we got to stop trying to shape ourselves into being what we think investors want to invest in. And we got to stop shaping the business into being the thing that investors want to invest in. And instead, we got to be true to ourselves and our heart on, let's build this based on what we think should exist in this world without compromise. And so we were urged from investors not to pursue the evolution of the business into what it is today. So we went from just mobile ordering only to saying what we really think should exist is a business that's built on principles that really contradict, I think, what conventional wisdom is. So you'll notice in business, all the business metaphors are around war and competition and lack and market share. It's a zero-sum game, right? I remember being in a class and they were talking about how global warming was melting the polar ice caps. And there was a business case on the new opportunities that the receding ice caps would create for oil drilling. I remember just being blown away by that. But it's okay, this is like institutional knowledge. This is like, we do everything for shareholder value. And it's, you can put your conscience aside because that's what you're supposed to do. And businesses from the top down are structured in that way to maximize shareholder value without conscience, without consequence, and you pass the buck and you get your golden parachute. And everybody knows that's wrong. And it's just, business at its heart, to me, should be about how do we make the world a better place. And so rather than using war metaphors, which is like the lowest form, or like the saddest moment in what it is to be a human, when things devolve to that point, and then to celebrate and build the rest of our systems around those metaphors just doesn't feel right. So instead, we thought, how could we build what is aligned with things that are more wholesome and healthy, not just for business, but that we see in nature and that we see in the universe and we see in life, and where traditional or conventional business metaphors speak to campaigns and dominance and competition and creating walled gardens. Our thought was, where there's competition, how could we exercise collaboration? Where there's dominance, how can we instead be a business of harmony? where there's zero sum thinking, how can we create systems of equilibrium that create abundance for everyone? And so even with Joe, how we relate to companies like Starbucks is we're not anti-Starbucks. We think there's room and there's a place for everything. We just want to create the systems that lower the barriers to access of having a healthy business that eliminates fear and lack and saves time and frees up entrepreneurs to do what entrepreneurs are called to do, which is to create, to innovate, and to express. And so that expression, like that idea of expression and business, in my mind, at its best, is when it's approached and it's seen as a medium of art, right? What makes art amazing is it's transmitting this energy from the heart and mind of its creator through the constraints and through what it permits in a really interesting way. So like a quick side note, business that I follow and we work with called Campfire Coffee, owned by Quincy, who when I met Quincy, he went by the name Q Dot, and he was an artist at the rival university at WSU, but I knew of him because everybody knew Q Dot. He was gonna make it as a rapper in a big way because he was so creative and so authentic. And fast forward years later, when I ran into Q Dot and actually met him for the first time, it was on the floor at Coffee Fest because he was opening up a coffee shop and he had this brilliant idea of taking that wholesome euphoria that comes with camping and associating it with a coffee brand. And he learned how to roast. He came up with his own technique on roasting over an open fire. He creates great coffee. Like you can go Google this guy and he has amazing reviews. He's like a top roaster with a whole new technique, but just the way that all that folds together, I was like, wow, that right there is such a great example of a coffee shop is more than a coffee shop. It's an extension of an identity, and it can be a artistic medium when approached that way, the right way. And business in general can be that. And I really look to Quincy and businesses like his as inspiration for how I want to have the courage to build Joe from a place of an artistic expression where, yes, we have to operate within these different constraints, but we can transmit this energy and the outcome of collaboration and harmony, and do so in a way where it creates security and opportunity to express, and do so in a compassionate and welcoming way for everyone. And so that might sound like a lot of word salad to folks right now, but to me, that's like the North Star of what we're doing. And just to bring all of this back, not to make all this about Joe or our own journey, the intention of this project as a whole is to have conversations like these and to connect with other creators and entrepreneurs and, yes, investors that are looking for these kinds of opportunities, or maybe have the same, or this resonates with, I should say. This is what resonates with me. This is what resonates with my brother, I know, from a business standpoint. And that's not something you can write on a LinkedIn profile. That's not something you can put into a Google search. And so I suspect that the only way that we can really connect with folks that are wanting to collaborate and work together and build these systems and build these businesses from these values is to start expressing it and to start putting myself out there, which is really uncomfortable, to be honest. And so I would invite anybody that has actually gotten 25 minutes into this, or however long this is, longer, to reach out and connect. I would love to have conversations like this. I would love to learn how other people are approaching this and if anybody else sees it the same way. And the goal on this project is to just have more of these conversations. Some of these might inform our business, some of these might turn into other projects. But overall, I think if I can connect with folks and have authentic conversations, and in the process of this, learn how to continue to find my own true self and be the most authentic, highest version of myself through learning and having more of these conversations and experiences, then regardless of anything related to business, that's an amazing outcome. So thank you all so much for let me know if this resonates with you, if this is the type of conversation that you want to have, or if there's an audience for this type of stuff. And let's chat. Thank you all.